And now, your daily dose of debate, breaking news, and uncensored views. This is the Michael Medved Show.
And another great day in this greatest nation on God's green earth. A great day to look at the state of mind that is percolating all around the country. There are big demonstrations that are scheduled for this Saturday coming up. The Easter holiday, of course, is coming up. So is Passover. And a lot of Americans are taking stock. And what percentage of Americans expect that the economy is going to be better a year from now? And what percentage of Americans expect that the economy is going to be worse a year from now? The numbers are tough to believe and tough to process, and they indicate a country that is very disillusioned with its political class. And it's not just Republicans, it's not just Trump, it's the Democratic Party too, maybe even worse. We will get to that talking to Tim Miller, who is a writer at large at the Bulwark and the host of the Bulwark podcast. He will be joining us later. We'll also be talking to an expert analyst in marriage. And he says there's no question about it that marriage got better. So why is marriage disappearing? Is it really disappearing? Do people grow up now and not expect that they are going to be married? We will get to that issue as well on the Medved Show. And meanwhile, in this golden era that President Trump promised for us when he got inaugurated, the higher gas prices are soon to hit grocery prices, inflation increases, and mortgage rates. The U.S. mortgage rates rose to their highest level in more than 6 months as the Iran war fuels economic uncertainty. So says CNN, with historic long lines at airports. Well, but the good news, baseball season starts today. And yesterday, for people who hate the Yankees, and there are a number of people who root for baseball teams basically because they hate the Yankees, the Yankees didn't do so well. They got shut out yesterday in their pre-opening day opening game against San Francisco. Meanwhile, the conflict in the Middle East is reviving the specter of inflation and hobbling the global economy, just as it was showing some signs of strengthening at the start of this year. That is a statement from the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, that brings together the 40 leading economic powers in the world. In its updated outlook on Thursday, the OECD, Paris-based organization, sharply increased its inflation forecast for major economies and now sees the average rate for the group of 20 this year jumping to 4%, with an even higher pace for inflation in the U.S. rather than the 2.8% that was predicted last December. Downward adjustments to growth were less dramatic in the short term, but largely because the drag from the Iran war was upset by better than expected momentum at the very start of this year. Meanwhile, as tensions rise across the Middle East, Iran has been laying traps on Karg Island, preparing for a potential U.S. attempt to seize the key oil hub, that according to multiple people familiar with U.S. intelligence. The Trump administration is weighing whether to use, yes, that's right, boots on the ground, troops to take the island in the northeastern Persian Gulf. The Karg Island handles roughly 90% of Iran's crude exports. To use that as leverage to force Tehran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. The CNN has reported that officials and military experts are warning that such an operation would carry major risks. This is a ground operation to seize Kharg Island, including significant U.S. casualties, God forbid, given the island's layered defenses. Separately, Israel says it killed a key Iranian Navy commander involved in the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. That doesn't in itself open up the Strait of Hormuz, which we need to do, but it moves us in that direction. Meanwhile, The Hill is reporting that President Trump's disapproval rating hit its highest number across both of his terms, that according to a Fox News poll. And yes, I know President Trump doesn't like Fox News polling, but that isn't a reason to discard it or to discard the fact that this is coming from the leading conservative news outlet on mass media. The survey from Fox News, which was released yesterday, found that 59% of registered voters disapprove of Trump's handling of the presidency, with 47% who say they strongly disapprove. And how many say they strongly approve of his job performance? 22%. 47% disapprove strongly, and 22% saying they strongly approve. This is a problem with the president going forward to his facing the voters, in effect, with the midterm elections. His name won't be on the ballot, but very frequently what happens with midterm elections is they reflect the general approval or disapproval of the president who is in power and whose party is in power. That would be Republicans. Pressure is mounting on Congress with that midterm election in mind coming up this November. Pressure is mounting in Congress to end the funding shutdown that has resulted in travel disruptions, missed paychecks, and even warnings of airport closures. Some airports in smaller cities, they may close the entire airport until they get this situation fixed and get payments going for Transportation Security Agency personnel who haven't received payments in some cases for a very long time and are just quitting. The warnings of airport closures, still lawmakers have yet to resolve the underlying issue of reining in President Donald Trump's immigration enforcement operations. And President Trump has complicated the issue because he has said he wants not only to avoid any concessions to Democrats in negotiating changes in the way that ICE operates, for instance, in getting ICE personnel not to wear masks. If that's the issue that is holding us up, it is a reflection of how poorly our institutions are functioning right now. Senators intend to vote today on a Republican proposal that would fund the Transportation Security Administration and much of the Department of Homeland Security, except for the enforcement and removal operations conducted by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Now, that plan is expected to fail. Democrats argue it does not go far enough at putting guardrails on the officers from ICE, Customs and Border Protection, and other federal agencies who are engaged in the immigration sweeps, particularly after the deaths of two Americans who were protesting mass sweeps and deportations. Speaking of protests, what are the plans this weekend for the No Kings movement? We'll get to that and more on the Medved Show. And Americans are in a terrible mood despite the beginning of the new baseball season, which should be great. I mean, particularly if you're a Mariners fan, you look forward to it. But there is a spreading negativity about everything, about both political parties, certainly about President Trump and his handling of the economy in particular, but also his handling of the war in Iran. This, despite our own battlefield successes, and the unpopularity of the war is dramatic. The president's approval rating has fallen to its lowest point since his return to the White House. That, according to a recent Reuters Ipsos poll. The decline in approval is linked to rising food and gas prices following a joint U.S.-Israel attack on Iran. Multiple recent polls show that Trump's approval rating ranges from 42% down to 34%. That's 1/3 of the electorate, with disapproval ratings significantly higher. Even among Republicans, disapproval of Trump's handling of the cost of living has increased, according to a USA Today report. Meanwhile, people are asking, why doesn't President Trump just say, okay, we won? He has said that time and time again, that we won a great victory, that our military has done spectacularly well with limited casualties and limited costs, et cetera, et cetera. All of that true, but the idea of just saying, okay, we won, now we're going home, is a dangerous idea for the country. There's a powerful column by Seth Cropsey, who is a former naval officer and a former deputy undersecretary of the Navy. And he's the author of several books. He has a piece about American credibility on the line in Iran. And he says that halting our efforts now would be a cataclysmic mistake with repercussions well beyond the Middle East. And then he explains why. Quitting the war while leaving Iran with the ability to seize control of the Strait of Hormuz and thereby able to shut down global oil supply would destroy American credibility. It could trigger a Chinese move against Taiwan or a Russian move against NATO, not simply because of relative military degradation, but because the U.S. clearly has no stomach for a knockdown fight against a great power, having abandoned a lesser bout against a much less capable adversary. It is crucial that Mr. Trump resist the temptation to walk away, stay the course, reopen the Strait of Hormuz, and demonstrate the credibility of America and its military commitments. The only way to accomplish this, says Seth Cropsey, is with a reasonable chance of success, is to put boots on the ground. The U.S. has trained and planned for this contingency for decades. At the helm today are military officers General Dan Kane, Admiral Frank Bradley, Admiral Brad Cooper, who understand the precise capabilities of U.S. Special Operations Forces and the advantages of automated targeting. Mr. Trump can trust these men to see this through. Deploying several thousand special ops forces, he writes, to southern Iran is enough to reopen the strait after some weeks of fighting. Casualties should be anticipated. To protect the special ops units, regular troops will be required. With U.S. air supremacy, the Iranian regime's forces will be loath to mass forces for an attack. And then he concludes, the question is whether this president has the courage and conviction to authorize this operation and to explain to the American people that the price of exerting U.S. power is far cheaper than the costs of its decline. It's worth taking to heart, it seems to me, part of what Seth Cropsey, who is also, by the way, the president of the Yorktown Institute, a respected think tank, it takes, there's reasons to take to heart the substance of his argument. Meanwhile, there is this, the Republicans have given Democrats the last and final offer on DHS funding, says Senator Thune, the Republican leader in the U.S. Senate. Okay, the last and final offer? I mean, last and final offer, what? They're going to get killed after this offer is turned down, which it will be. Senate Majority Leader John Thune opened the chamber today by saying that Democrats need to get serious about funding the Department of Homeland Security. The Dems are now in possession of what I think is our last and final offer, said Senator Thune. So let's hope this gets it done. Thune told reporters about where negotiations stood. Thune would not comment on what was in the proposal after each side and the White House have sought to find a deal before lawmakers are set to leave next week for recess. It's the Easter recess. President Trump has already said, stay in Washington, forget about Easter. Enough is enough, said Senator Thune. Republicans have bent over backward to negotiate with Democrats. But that is not developing as directly as one would hope. Meanwhile, President Trump won an award. He got something he cherishes, a golden statue. This was presented to him as a brand new award. Who gave him that award? And did it signify? Is this that present from Iran that he talked about yesterday? A present worth a lot of money? No, that present, though, has been revealed. And will it change dramatically the nature of the war? Not really, but it makes President Trump feel better. Just like the new award that he has received, which is actually a golden statue. We will get to that and get to David French writing a passionate piece about end-stage polarization. Are Americans so badly divided today that there really is no hope? As David French suggests there in the New York Times, there may be no hope to bring people back together, even on issues that really, really should be able to unify the public. We will get to that and to more coming up about the future of the war and of this country on the Michael Medved Show. And on the Michael Medved Show, there is one mystery that has now been solved. You may remember that President Trump spoke several times yesterday, a present that he had received, that the whole United States had received from our enemies in Iran. And President Trump revealed what the present was. The present was 10 oil tankers. What? Iran is giving us 10 oil tankers? No. They are allowing those tankers to pass through the Strait of Hormuz this week as a present to the United States, President Donald Trump explained. Iran made the gesture to show the U.S., quote, the fact that we're real and solid and we're there. That's what President Trump said today during a cabinet meeting. Trump made the claim after insisting the U.S. has very substantial talks going on with respect to Iran, as Tehran has denied direct talks have begun. Okay, the difficulty with viewing this as a present, as a goodwill gesture from the Iranians, is it makes a lot of sense. Who is going to get the payment for the oil that is on these tankers. It's going to come back to Iran. So that makes all the sense in the world that they would allow 10 oil tankers to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. And I guess their idea is that the pressure on President Trump is so heavy to call an end to the war because of the increase in the price of fuel, sending 10 tankers full of the Strait of Hormuz to get out into the wider world. They probably aren't coming directly to the United States. But okay, understood why President Trump would prefer to see this as a positive development and a sign that maybe, just maybe, this struggle, this excursion, as he puts it, will come to a successful conclusion. The other speculation, when he basically said he was going to get a wonderful present, was that he was going to get some kind of award. He loves these awards, whether they come from FIFA, from the International Soccer Authorities, whoever they come from. President Trump loves his awards, and he got another one, a brand new one. Today there was a meeting of the National Republican Congressional Committee that is getting together all of the people who are going to be leading the fight for Republican candidates for the Congress of the United States coming up in the midterm elections. And President Trump got a prize, even though he is not favored to win most of those elections coming up. I mean, historically, the president in power loses seats if his party controls the House of Representatives. Last time, in the middle of President Trump's first term, he lost 43 seats. He's projected to lose at least 20 seats this time, and it could be worse. But Mike Johnson presented Trump with a brand new award, which is called the America First Award. And at a meeting of GOP congressional leaders, Mike Johnson announced the basis for this new award, which I know it's a gold statue, and President Trump will appreciate it. This is clip 10, Speaker Mike Johnson.
The president has done so much for the American people, and we want to honor him in some small way, some token of our appreciation for his leadership. And so tonight, we have created a new award. We're going to do something we've never done before. We're going to honor him with a new award that we'll present annually from this point forward. But he is the suitable and fitting recipient of the first ever America First Award. We can think of no better title for what that is. That's this beautiful golden statue here, appropriate for the new golden era in America.
Okay, who's paying for the golden statue? I'm sure they're getting donations for it, but wouldn't it be more in style if it ended up being taxpayer money somehow? And the first ever America First Award? Okay, who gets the second ever America First Award? Would that be... You know what would be interesting would be if they decide to give it to a Democrat. No, I'm not suggesting seriously that they do that. And by the way, do we have enough awards floating around out there? Well, not for President Trump. He spoke at that National Republican Congressional Committee event, and he suggested that Iran was also ready to give him the ultimate award, but he turned them down. What is he talking about? This is clip 3.
Never seen anything like we're doing in the Middle East with Iran. And they are negotiating, by the way, and they want to make a deal so badly, but they're afraid to say it because they figure they'll be killed by their own people. They're also afraid they'll be killed by us. There's never been a head of a country that wanted that job less than being the head of Iran. I don't want it. We listen to some of the things they say. We hear them very clearly. They say, I don't want it. We'd like to make you the next supreme leader. No, thank you. I don't want it.
They would like to make him the next supreme leader. Does that mean he would have to become a Muslim? And a Shiite Muslim at that? Actually, the Iranians have not confirmed that they offered President job of being supreme leader of Iran. They actually turned Trump down, not only as supreme leader, but they turned down all 15 points that he had offered as part of a ceasefire agreement. And of course, part of what they are insisting on for any ceasefire agreement is reparations, which they are insisting that they should receive. In other words, that they should get paid for some of the destruction that they brought upon themselves by basically continuing with the nuclear program that they were obligated, according to prior agreements, to abandon. Meanwhile, President Trump had words for NATO as well. What is the situation with the economy right now and the state of the war? Tim Miller from The Bulwark is the host of the Bulwark podcast, talks about how the White House did not anticipate that Iran would shut down the Strait of Hormuz. Question is, why not? Commentators actually suggested that would be part of any war that developed, but President Trump seems to have been surprised. It's not a good look, says Tim Miller, for the U.S. to be fighting to some form of stalemate with a power like Iran because China is watching. Plus, how the war is impacting the supply chain and the question of whether the markets may be underpricing oil so far because they keep banking on Trump to do his usual taco. What's the taco stand for? Trump always cops out. Chickens out is actually what it stands for. We will be exploring these ideas with Tim Miller coming up. Just a quick reminder to enjoy and to see our conversations by subscribing to our YouTube channel, which is Michael Medved Official. Tim Miller joins us. He is the writer at large for The Bulwark and a host of the Bulwark podcast. And we were just speaking for a few moments before we join you, speaking about the fact that most of the mood of the country appears to be expecting things to get worse before they get better. Why is that, do you think, Tim Miller?
Well, because things are going to get worse before they get better, and most people aren't stupid, I think, Michael. I think folks can be fooled, and they can wish and hope for things, and we've seen that obviously in the last few decades of our politics. But look, the president has not offered people any sort of vision or plan for why things might get better beyond the power of his aura and the fact that he might just will it into existence by saying golden age over and over again. He tried to put in his tariff regime that made things worse. They don't really even have an agenda this year. Their State of the Union this year was all looking back about the things that he felt like he did well in the first year. And now we have this war with Iran, and people are seeing the cost at the pump. They know from past experience that this stuff doesn't just snap back immediately. There's no real message or strategy for how things might get better. So, I think that folks who have a negative look on the trajectory are really just living in reality.
Well, the amazing thing is they look at their own situation and find that aside from the price of gas and the price of food and the price of everything else, it's just gloomy, bad news. And the fact is that the planes are, people are missing their planes and they're waiting 4 hours for security lines. If you were advising the president, and I'm sure he reads your material with great interest.
Yeah.
If you had a message to give him as to how he could improve his own standing and Republican chances in the midterm elections, what would you advise him to do?
Do you remember the old Seinfeld episode where George Costanza, was lamenting his life trajectory, and he decided he was just going to do the opposite? Whatever his instinct was, he would just do the opposite. That would be my message for the president right now. I think that they should turn around out of Iran immediately. Like, the sooner the better. I think he wants to save face or whatever their plan is. They don't have a strategic plan for success. I would love for the Iranian regime to be toppled. That does not seem like there's any chance of that happening. So they should just declare victory and come home. I think that they should repeal all the tariffs. I think that he should stop caring about the ballroom and the Rose Garden and the Kennedy Center and care more about how to invest in the communities that have been left behind that he claimed to care about. I think about how you could where there are areas of common ground, you could actually pass legislation and have it signed by the president. I know it's a quaint idea in areas that might ease people's tax burden or regulatory burden or whatever, like the traditional things that you do to try to help the economy. But I don't see any evidence that he'd do any of that. He has any of that in mind. Maybe
one of the things that we've tried to talk about on our program and that I've tried to talk about in my work is the tremendous budget deficit and that we have, and the national debt, which is approaching $40 trillion. I mean, and there's no program or no serious attempt to make it better, just a request for more money for various undertakings, including some of the frivolous undertakings you mentioned. And I know it's supposed to be from private donations, but the big new White House ballroom, which is going to be the best ballroom in the world, is this really a priority that the American people share?
I don't think so. I think that his base of supporters will be on board for whatever he wants them to be, at least the core group, not everybody that voted for him, but the core base. So I think they will be. But as to the debt, I mean, this one is the one thing we've discussed that's not a unique Trump problem. Pretty much everything else is. This is a bipartisan problem, and it's a cross-Washington problem. But they paid lip service to this. Like, they recognized that they cared about it. I mean, when they brought in Elon Musk to do Doge, Elon said at the time that if we don't resolve our national debt problem, we're going to be in debt slavery to China. Now, that is maybe a little overstated, obviously, and dramatic, as is Elon's style. But obviously, they recognized this was a problem. And yet Doge did not manage to save any money. Like, they cut a bunch of stuff, but simultaneously they added to the budget in a bunch of other places. And a lot of the people that they cut ended up suing the government. So the government had to pay them off. And so like net, the government spending increased every quarter, even given Doge. So I do think that is a real problem. I think that's a little bit harder to solve than some of the other ones that I laid out, where Trump could just fix it by just stop doing what he's been doing to make things worse. But I mean, I think that we're going to be in we're going to have it'll probably be somebody besides Trump that will be left holding the bag on the budget side of things.
And when you talk about somebody besides Trump, is there anyone out there on the political scene who actually impresses you positively, who seems to be offering a refreshing and viable alternative to the kind of leadership we've been getting from both parties in the last couple of years?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, it's nobody on the right, because the right has been just totally subsumed into a cult of Trumpism. And maybe after Trump leaves, there'll be an opportunity for 1,000 flowers to bloom and somebody to emerge that impresses me. But there just would be hard to imagine who that is. And I think Spencer Cox has done a pretty good job as governor of Utah. But besides that, and I think, by the way, on the Democratic side, Jared Polis has done a pretty good job as governor of Colorado. There's something about the Mountain West independence that has allowed for that, but neither of them are plausible national figures for either party. I think Wes Moore is pretty good as governor of Maryland. At some level, he's kind of a conventional Democrat, but at least he, I think, has an optimism and a willingness to enact some reform-minded policies that he's done in Maryland on education and other areas. It's not my cup of tea politically, but it's hard not to be impressed by Zoran. And I made the joke yesterday on Twitter that only Nixon could go to China, and so only Zoran's, able to cut red tape in government. But I do think that the fact that he has so much credibility at the far left has given him an opportunity to be kind of pragmatic, at least in the first 2 months. We'll see how it turns out in the first 2 months in New York. But no, I think there's a lot of there's a big vacuum, I think, for somebody to run against both parties right now. And Trump carried that mantle in 2016, and it would be nice if somebody would emerge that has a more, positive, optimistic idea for reform than Trump.
That's actually fascinating and encouraging. What about the prospect of a J.D. Vance versus Gavin Newsom race, which appears to be, according to the betting odds, the most likely outcome that we're looking forward to, if that's the right word.
Are you
for
trying to get me to jump out the window? Are you trying to get me to jump out the window, Michael? I think that's
God forbid.
Look, a long way away from 2028. I think that would be a very depressing race. I think JD looks a lot less strong than he did before the Iran war. I think he's got a lot of internal coalition management problems now. And look, Gav, if you had me on in 2012, whatever it would have been, 2014, we would have said it was Jeb Bush versus Hillary Clinton. If you would have had me on in 2006, we would have said it was Hillary Clinton versus George Allen. These things change a lot over the course of 2 years. And so, God willing, we can find an option better than those two.
Well, you can continue reading about it at the Bulwark, and where Till Miller is the writer at large, and join him for the Bulwark podcast. Let us hope that with this spring season, there is a time for renewal and for moving away some of the polarization and needless struggles and hostility that permeate the American political scene. Coming up, we're going to be talking about the future of marriage. Marriage is supposed to be better now than ever, with more alternatives, more options, and yet it appears to be declining numerically. Why? We will get to that and to much more coming up in This Greatest Nation on God's Green Earth.